Very similar to the story that we've seen a lot with the Mag 7, specifically the hyperscalers on that capex spin when we're talking about Amazon. Um, Meta, like I said, Meta has figured out the way to say, how are we going to monetize this? Yes, we're going to spend more. Yes, we're going to spend more. We're going to build more. But how are we going to monetize? And Amazon has kind of gotten away from that a little bit. Yes, e-commerce was the thing. Uh, when we talk about cloud storage, that was the thing. We didn't see growth. What we saw was them staying steady. And sometimes staying steady is not advantageous for people who are investors, right? When we talk about future guidance, people love to see a growth or at least a future growth rate. And so we saw that happen with Google when they reported in their cloud service. They went from a 38% growth to from 39 to 38. Amazon, something very similar. And so we saw a pullback. Now, again, the CapEx story, it is a story, and we shouldn't sneeze over it. But when we're talking about expansion, would you rather overshoot or undershoot in this position? And I think the clear sign from all of the hyperscalers is that we'd rather win and we'd rather overshoot. And so that is the story with them. Palantir, a little bit different. When we talk about valuations being out of control, this is one of those companies, if you look at their multiple, tough to explain. What did they see over the past year? We saw growth. We saw a lot of positive sentiment around the company. We talked about AI. We talked about defense AI and how it was going to change the way that we look at defense going forward from an international standpoint and from a national security standpoint. And so, again, with them, have they seen growth? Yes. Has the growth been steady? Yes. Has it been blockbuster? I don't know what blockbuster is going to look like anymore for them because the government contracting is a large part of their revenue.
Palantir?
Palantir. This is Palantir now.
Yeah.
It is a large part of their revenue. Has their consumer side grown? Yes. How much further can it grow? These are the questions that you start to come to light when you're looking at, hey, that valuation is really, what's their multiple, Ian? Like something in the hundreds?
Yeah.
Which is
an insane overvaluation.
For everybody in that category, it's not even close. And so now it's like, if we're going to expand and we're going to spend, what are our margins going to look like if we don't grow at the same rate we did over the past 12 months? These are some serious questions for Palantir. Will they be here? For sure. What will the growth look like? That is the question. How much of the technology can't be, how much of a moat do they have around defense technology, right? Like you've talked about companies that haven't IPO'd yet that are innovating every day. And I'm sure there's 50 to 100 more that are on the cusp of saying, hey, we've got something. How will they keep a moat around that? How will they keep their competitive advantages? These are things we got to watch. Do I think Palantir will be here long term? Absolutely. Amazon, obviously, is one of my favorite companies of all time. I'm not worried about them, but this is why we're starting to see that slide.
Alex Carp, I won't say anything negative about your company since you killed my camera, and I don't want fentanyl-laced urine to be dropped on me, as you said in your interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin. So I will tackle Amazon. Amazon down 17%, worst month since 22. There's two big issues here with Amazon, or three. One is negative cash flow. Two, low profit margin has always been an issue for the company. And unfortunately, they don't have a caliber chief executive at the helm. You need a caliber chief executive at the helm if we're going to enter, they won't say recession, but let's say economic restructuring or short-term collapse.
May I pose a question?
Go ahead.
3 weeks ago, I asked you about the performance of Andy Jassy.
And it's good, but
because the performance of Amazon since he's taken over, I mean, it's almost flat at this point.
Yeah, it's good to see. Like also too, in executive leadership and in any position, sometimes some shoes are too big to fill. Like Tim Cook was probably in modern era the only CEO in modern times who replaced his CEO as grandiose as Steve Jobs and did a great job. Now they also erased the image and likeness of Steve Jobs out of fucking HQ to do so. Some shoes are too big to fill. I think he's done great because they've always been a low profit margin business. But then when you spend $650 billion on AI, that gives you concern, and you have to spend it to keep up when you have an open AI that can be the darling and Anthropic to be a darling. This Claude bot just got bought for $1 billion. Manus integrated into Meta. You have to spend, but from an investor's mindset, if my metric is to get 5x out of every dollar deployed, how are they going to get 5x out of this spend? I don't know. So it's going to give you some concern if the margins are low. At least when NVIDIA is doing this, they have really wide profit margins. So you can absorb some of those losses and say, okay, in 2 years or 3 years, I can see how we can get a return. Amazon's profit margin, I think, is like 3.9%. Very troubling, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, you know what the interesting part is that Amazon had a $200 billion quarter, which is, think about that. Hey, $200 billion quarter, where we know companies that aren't even worth $200 billion, right? Like we were celebrating a couple of years ago when Amazon was the first company, and I think Apple did it in the same quarter, to have $100 billion in a quarter. 3 years later, here we are at $200 billion. So revenue is still being generated. Yes, the spend is very high, but they live in a unique space, right? The cloud service we already know about. They'll be in healthcare. I think they did something interesting with they cut off all their fresh marts, right? When we were talking about there's not even going to be people in supermarkets that go into a completely Whole Foods model. So they are making changes. I think their business will be, they'll have a lot of disruption because of AI, but I think wanted disruption, whereas they don't have the same amount of workforce because their technology, their spending to technology will now help enhance the bottom line. I think that's where Amazon's headed.
And they have a morale issue. Like Jeff, even though he was a numbers guy, he was able, at least in public sentiment and public institutional relationship, to be warm enough to make Amazon feel like it was a place you would want to be. Jassy is all numbers, all Excel. So it's a coder approach. And I don't know, at a time when there's so much unrest in the world, if that's the right way to go. Tim Cook is the same way, but he also took over Apple when we were into an economic upswing due to quantitative easing. Debt is not there. So even though we're spending the money, the debt is higher than ever. I just think we need stronger leadership. But the tough part is not that many candidates who want that job. So got to get the spend under control.
So Palantir, any commentary?
Shout out to Alex Carp. Next week. Tune in next week when I give my insight on why Palantir. But also, if we're going to be very honest, you can't be anti-ICE and pro-Palantir. Pick one.
I don't think anybody's pro-Palantir.
Shit. Put in chat. Put yes in chat if you pro-Palantir. Some people have come up to me and be like, "Man, I don't give a fuck about none of that bullshit as long as I get my papers done." It's like, okay, until it gets your grandma. Okay. Gotcha. I hear you. I hear you. Right.
There was an alleged leak of files from Palantir. Did you see it? Okay, well, I'll stop there. I'll stop. Okay. Yep. So, yep.
Alex and Peter been quiet ever since. Allegedly. So, yeah, it was interesting. And you have to wonder, if that leak happened, why and who initiated it. A company with that much value and so much sensitive information about geopolitical issues and missions currently going on, how did that get leaked over the weekend?
Yeah, I think the face recognition is like low-hanging fruit from what I read. Yeah. Allegedly, I read.
Yeah.
Could have heard it somewhere on a podcast somewhere.
For the brother that asked about the are we going to talk about Robinhood, expand into Robinhood venture funds? Watch the episode that we did with Vlad Tenev. We did an episode with the CEO of Robinhood for Earning Leisure. We spoke about that amongst other things.
Yeah.
Gives good insight, and it's directly from the head of the company.